Gold, directed by Stephen Gaghan, written by Patrick Massett and John Zinman. Gold, a story about Kenny Wells, played by Matthew McConaughey, who is down on his luck and wants to find gold in the Indonesian jungle. Matthew McConaughey delivers an outstanding performance as the character Kenny Wells. He really delivered everything that he had. He put his soul and his heart, literally his sweat, on screen. He really gave it his all in this performance. He put on weight. He shaved the top of his head so he could have a bald spot. There was one thing that was bothering me though as I was watching this movie. There's this thing with Matthew McConaughey's tooth, and it looked like it was like really weird looking, and I didn't know what to make of it, and it did kind of bother me. Like during moments in the film, I would focus my attention on that tooth, and I would just stare at it and stare at it and stare at it until it just really distracted me from watching and paying attention to the story in this movie. I don't know why. It was just this tooth, really, I just couldn't get it out of my head, and I couldn't get it out of my sight because it was just right there in front of me. It was just weird. Edgar Ramirez is in this movie. I really can't say much about him as an actor, whether he's good, whether he's bad. But in this movie, he was fine. You know, he serviced the story, he played his part, he did his job. I have no complaints as far as Edgar Ramirez is concerned. His performance was very good. He was believable. I thought he played the character really well. I can't really say much about him because I don't know much about the character in this movie. But from what Edgar Ramirez did, he did his job. Bryce Dallas Howard is in this thing. Bryce Dallas Howard, she was fine with what she had to work with. I don't think she really did enough. She didn't really have a big part in this movie. It seems to me like they just were already filming this movie, and then in the midst of filming they decided, oh, we need to add like a love interest for the Kenny Wells character, so hey, let's just call up Bryce Dallas Howard. And it seems like that's what they did. They just called her up and said, oh yeah, why don't you just become a part of this movie. She doesn't really do a lot here. I mean, she's effective in what she does, but as a whole, it's just like she's bleh. Stephen Gaghan is the director of this movie, and he did movies like Traffic and Syriana. As far as the directing is concerned, it's pretty straightforward. There isn't any like cinematic shots, anything that you know is really extremely cinematic in this thing. It's just mostly close-ups on people's faces. You do get a couple of nice sweeping shots of like Indonesia, stuff like that. But there was this one shot in the movie that I saw that looked really fake, or the background was just extremely out of focus. It looked really, really bad. There are a couple of music choices in this movie that kind of reminded me of like the remake Ocean's 11 and 12 and 13 movies with George Clooney and Brad Pitt. Those little musical choices sounded a little similar to me, but the music in this movie set up each individual scene and told me how to feel. It was like, okay, this music is very exciting, and so this is an exciting moment because these characters just accomplished something. Or this music is it's very somber because it's like, oh yeah, this is a sad moment and we need to feel sad for what these characters are currently going through. And so I thought the music in this thing was really effective, and it really catered to the story and the progression of each scene really well. Now, this movie is inspired by a true story. The story in this movie isn't like overly complicated or anything like that. I feel like a lot of people who have dreams and aspirations in their life really could relate to the Kenny Wells character in this movie and to the Edgar Ramirez character in this movie, because they're just two guys who are down on their luck and who don't have anyone who believes in them, and they just want to strike gold in the Indonesian jungle, and they just want to be able to say that they did that. When you start off seeing Matthew McConaughey's character in this movie, he's a guy who really has these aspirations in his life, and he really wants to just succeed. As each scene progresses and a character changes, there are these transitions that Matthew McConaughey's character goes through, where it's like, you know, it's the rise and it's the fall. You know, the rise and fall of these individuals who were dreamers seeking stuff that they wanted to have in their lives, and stuff that they felt would fulfill them. Bryce Dallas Howard has a relationship with Matthew McConaughey's character in this movie, and I feel that the relationship isn't really warranted. It's just like there, and there are the scenes that she is in. You know, she's good, with what she's doing and what she has to work with. But then ultimately, to me, it just feels like, okay, she's there and she's not really having much to work with. It's just like she was just thrown in there as like last minute thing. Like, we need to have some sort of element to kind of draw more audience members in, and have this try and be more relatable to women or something like that. I don't know, but her character really didn't do anything in this movie, and so ultimately it just fell short, and so ultimately it just fell flat. Anyone could relate to the story. Any person who has dreams and goals and aspirations can relate to this story, because it's just a simple story. It's just like, here, you see this guy, it starts off with Kenny Wells, and he's down on his luck, goes along in his life trying to just live that dream, just like a bunch of regular average people like myself on this planet try to do. And you always have your pitfalls and people who try to knock you down and obstacles and all that stuff. And even in the midst of those situations, it's good, you pull yourself back up, or you have someone that guides you along and gives you the guidance necessary in order to succeed in whatever it is that you're trying to fulfill within yourself or in your life. And that's what this movie is generally about. I thought this movie was okay. It wasn't great or anything like that. It did hold my attention for the most part. I was engaged in what was going on the screen. Matthew McConaughey's performance it's stellar, pretty much. He's the most magnetic force driving this whole thing along, while everyone else like Edgar Ramirez and Bryce Dallas Howard, I feel, are just there. I mean, Edgar Ramirez has more to do than Bryce Dallas Howard in this movie, so his scenes, they flourish a lot more, I guess, than hers, because she's only in a few quick scenes, and it's just like really just standard stuff, like just standard, like, oh yeah, it's the girlfriend boyfriend thing, and that's pretty much it. So there's not a lot of meat and potatoes there as far as the whole relationship aspect of this movie is concerned. But with the whole living your aspirations, living out the dream, going after your dreams, setting goals for yourself, and never quitting is the message of this movie, I feel. And I feel that it is a cliche message at that. It is predictable. It goes exactly where you think it's going to go, but there is like a slight thing that happens in the movie that sort of, if you don't know the real story, switches your whole entire framing of direction you had going into this. Going into it, watching it, it's okay, and then after the experience is all said and done, it's like, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. And I only know her from Jurassic World. I haven't really seen her in anything else. I haven't really paid attention to her.